It's great to be here in Belgium. What I'd like to talk to you about today are the United States government's core technology priorities. I'd like to highlight four areas. Number one, what we're doing to effectively manage the $80 billion we spend annually on information technology. Number two, what we're doing as part of our efficiency and effectiveness agenda. Number three, what we're doing in the context of cybersecurity. And number four, what we're doing to make sure that as the public sector in the United States, we're focused on an open, transparent, and participatory government. When it comes to managing the $80 billion that we spend in information technology, one of the fundamental shifts we drove from day one was to actually make sure that we're practicing how we were making those investments in an open, transparent, and very, very public way. The first thing we did is we launched the IT dashboard, and I still remember my first day on the job when I got a set of PDF documents and people said, here are $27 billion out of an $80 billion budget that are way over budget and years behind schedule. For example, there was an IT project that was 12 years behind schedule and $1 billion had already been spent. And immediately decided to launch this IT dashboard to shine light on the performance of this portfolio. Right after that, we launched these tech set accountability sessions. Now, what these tech set sessions are essentially, it's about bringing the right people around the table to problem solve how these investments are performing. So for example, we looked at just 35 IT projects across the federal government. And from those 35, we were able to reduce the IT budget by $2 billion just on those 35 investments. But more important than the budget reduction was the fact that we were able to accelerate the deliverables of those investments. And some of these investments, by the way, had deliverables that were out 5 to 10 years. And we were able to accelerate them on an average to 8 months instead of these long cycles. The second area is around how we actually invest across the board in information technology. To give you an example, when it comes to data centers, the core infrastructure that powers the digital operations of the United States government, we went from 432 data centers in 1998 to 2,094 data centers today. Unfortunately, what you're seeing here is runaway growth in the number of data centers that are being built, and CIOs were far more focused on building yet another data center rather than actually focusing their energies on the intersection of services with the American people. So part of what we've embarked on is a very aggressive plan to not only reduce the number of data centers, but also to begin selling the real estate of that infrastructure that's not going to be used. And the way we're going to be able to do that, for example, at the Department of Homeland Security, we're going from 24 data centers down to 2. We're going to be able to do that by fundamentally rethinking how we deploy IT, and that's where cloud computing comes in. It offers a huge potential for government to get out of the business of developing custom solutions and instead move to an environment where we're literally provisioning services, turning them on. Very much like plugging your iron, or whether it's plugging your television to the utility grid, or it's like turning on a tap of water to make sure that you're getting what you need and you're paying for those services on demand. So we've moved very aggressively on cloud computing. Recently, I just issued a set of security controls that we'll be using to make sure that we're moving forward in terms of the cloud in a very safe, secure manner. And I've instituted a cloud-first policy for how we actually leverage information technology across the federal government. We just awarded to 11 vendors infrastructure as a service contracts, and more importantly, what we've seen is the private sector respond. Companies like Google, Microsoft, IBM have leaned forward, and they've made available .gov dedicated cloud computing solutions that allow the public sector to move faster to the cloud, to leverage not only the savings from an economic perspective, but more importantly, to shift the focus of IT departments across the government to where it matters most, to how citizens access those services. In cybersecurity, one of the biggest areas we're focused on is to make sure that no longer do we spend resources on just writing reports. The tragedy is that over the last decade, what we've seen is that agencies have spent more time and money on actually writing reports about our cybersecurity posture rather than actually securing the very systems. I often talk about how the reports we end up writing and filing away in these cabinets are more secure than the very systems that we're supposed to protect. That is why what we've done from a Department of Homeland Security perspective is that we've shifted towards an environment where we're actually building capacity of hackers who are going to be attacking our own systems, stress testing those systems, and then having blue teams that are actually going to go after those systems to make sure that we fix those vulnerabilities. In an environment where you have organized crime and nation states that are constantly attacking our critical infrastructure, it's vital that we confront that challenge not by reports that are written annually or quarterly, but by real-time response to those challenges. I'd like to spend a little more time on what we're actually doing in the context of how we engage the public, how we create an open and transparent government. As many of you know, we launched data.gov with 47 data sets in May of 2009. Today, we have over 270,000 data sets on every aspect of government operations, from healthcare to energy to education. And part of what we've seen is the ability to unleash creativity and the ingenuity of the public in ways that were structurally impossible before. So consider this, for example. When it came to healthcare data, there actually used to be data that the government would actually charge, $100 or so and ship that data in a DVD or a CD. By putting it on data.gov, what we're able to see is innovation happen. What I mean by that is now you can go on a commonly used search engine like Bing or Google, and for example on Bing what you'll see is if you search for a name of a hospital, that same data that the government had locked in its own databases is now available to end users. For example, when they're searching for a hospital name, they can actually see how did patients rate that hospital right in the search results, and they can also see the average outcomes for certain procedures and the closest hospitals nearby. More importantly, what we're also seeing is third parties innovate in ways that were not possible before. So there was an agency that put out data on products that have been recalled. As soon as they put that data out, one of the more interesting things that happened was that a developer took that data, created an application called Recalls on the iPhone, and you could literally see on a real-time basis as these products were being recalled, you could scroll down and see when they were recalled, you could see the picture. And we started co-innovating by adding the video camera of the iPhone and the Droid platforms. And now what people can do is literally go to a store using their camera, take a picture of a product, the barcode, and see whether the product has been recalled or not. That is a function of innovation that would not have been possible if the government did not democratize that raw data. And part of what we're trying to do across the board is recognizing the power of platforms and thinking of government as just another platform upon which innovation can be built, new economies can be birthed, and also where the public can hold the public sector accountable. So when I talk about the context of open government, it's not just through holding government accountable, which we want to make sure we enable, but also creating a platform that would allow third parties to innovate and build on top of the raw infrastructure that the government has already invested in. And on top of that, created a whole host of economic opportunities. An example is what happened with our Blue Button initiative. Now here's an interesting problem. So our healthcare system, we've got a whole host of electronic health records. So think about the Veterans Administration, which has a whole host of electronic health records, again, that were locked behind databases that veterans didn't have access to. a very simple act which basically said, well, what if we put a blue button on the very system that veterans access? What if a veteran, by clicking on that blue button, could download their own healthcare record? What will be the outcome? Well, interestingly enough, what happened is the second we enabled that feature, within a matter of a month, we had over 100,000 veterans using the blue button feature. More importantly, a whole new industry was born, where now you had companies all over the country creating blue button readers and adding more value to the notion of using that information, that data. I talk about how if you look at the GPS industry, or if you look at what happened at the National Institutes of Health collaborating with other world bodies in the Human Genome Project, the act of releasing that information, democratizing that data, what you ended up happening is you created a whole host of new industries, but more importantly, you were able to solve some of the toughest problems we faced nationally and globally. But more importantly, I think there's something much, much bigger going on. Through technology, what we're seeing is a fundamental shift in power. It used to be that the public would convene in physical public squares back in the days in the agora. Today, what's possible is that everybody with access to a cell phone, a mobile device, or a desktop has the ability now not only to engage their government and petition their government, but also fundamentally change the way their government operates. And I think what we're realizing is this new model that enables the public not to just be seen in a self-image as people who need to be governed, but actually as co-creators, enables us to create fundamental value in ways that were structurally impossible. And frankly, what I think you're going to see with the innovations, whether it's in cloud computing, in mobile computing, in democratizing data, is that some of these toughest problems that we talk about are not just going to be solved by a few people within the public sector, but you open it up in the same way. If you look at the last 3 big successful companies, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Apple, have been able to create tremendous value. They've built platforms. It wasn't Apple that created all those iPhone apps. There was people like you who created those iPhone apps. It wasn't YouTube that created all those videos. It was people like you that created all those videos. And what you're seeing here, even with Facebook, you see all this new content being created by the people. In the same way, I think there's huge potential as we tap into the ingenuity of the public to fundamentally change the way we actually solve these really, really difficult problems. Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to working with each of you as we try to rethink the role of technology and how it can fundamentally transform the public sector to serve our citizens in a more effective and efficient way.